Namaskar everybody and welcome to the Gita Satsang. So let us start with the Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतः क्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये। रामानुजदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकम्। So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us start. So in the previous satsang, we had seen shlokas 7 to 10 of the 9th chapter. So to just summarize briefly what we talked about, in shloka 7, Krishna had told that how everything at the end of the cycle, once Srishti has taken place and then it has been maintained for some time, then there is dissolution. And at that time, everything dissolves. At the time of Pralaya, everything dissolves into Krishna himself. Then we saw in the 8th shloka that Krishna says that not only this dissolving is because of him, but when creation happens through the Mula Prakriti, from Mula Prakriti through Mahan, Ahankara, and the Panchatanmatras and so on, it is he who is creating all these categories, the 4 categories of beings, which are the Devatas, the animals, humans, and inanimate things. Then further, he talked about how all the jivas are under the influence of Prakriti and the gunas, the sattva, rajo, tamo gunas. And because of that, there is delusion which is caused. So, although the Atma has infinite jnana, but it gets limited based on the body which it has taken. So, the behavior and the abilities will depend on the body which has been taken. Now, we said that we came to this question that if God creates everything, then we are seeing that in this world there's so much of inequality. So, does it mean that God is partial or he's cruel, and that is why he has made these kind of unequal kind of situations for different people? And then we talked of the example of this temple in near Kumbakonam, near Tanjavur, called the Harashapa Vimochana Perumal. And we saw how Shiva had to finally come to this Lord to get that Brahmahati dosha, to get that Kapala completely removed from his hand. And we said that why did the Lord do all this Leela? What was the need for all this? First, he made Shiva behave in such a way that he cut off the head of Brahma. Then after that, he made that Kapala stick to Shiva's hand, and so on and so forth. Then he made him come to him. And after that, he gave him relief from the curse. So why God had to do all these things? So then the answer to that was that God does not do everything like this. Every jiva has some amount of ability to determine what they will do. They have some free will, some kriyamana karma. And Krishna is not affected by this sense of being partial to anybody, nor of being cruel to anybody. He does not have the quality of Vaishamyam or Naidranyam. So, whatever we get, we are saying that there is so much inequality, and we are seeing that everybody has different kind of situations and different abilities, different qualities, and so on. All the things that we get, each individual gets, is because of their previous karmas and whatever they have done in past karmas, according to that only they are allotted certain things. So it is not that the Lord plays any role in that allotment. It is just a question of a simple give and take account, which is set up because of our past karmas. So it is not God's bias that gives us inequalities in this world, but it is our own past karma which determines what kind of a life we are going to have. Then we saw how, why we said that Krishna is not influencing anything. Then what is his role there? So in the beginning, when we are making some kind of a choice, he does not interfere with that. And once we have made the choice, so he is udasina. He is not concerned with what choosing we have done. But once we have made a choice, then he enables that thing and he supports us to do that. And whatever we have done, there have to be consequences which come because of those actions. So he is the one who ensures those actions. Then we saw how the example for this is that Krishna, he explained entire Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And finally, but at the end, he didn't tell Arjuna that, see, Arjuna, you should be doing this only. He just told Arjuna that do what you think is right. What you wish to do, you do. So this is, it is not that Krishna is not bothered. It is not that he is indifferent. Rather, he has decided that he has given some free will to the Jivatma. So he will not interfere with that Jivatma's actions. He has already prescribed what has to be done, what has not to be done in the Shastras. So the wise Jivatma is that kind of a person who takes that guidance from the Shastras and accordingly lives his life. So we also saw that if somebody has to attain moksha, then there are many different things that come into the picture. There is material nature or prakriti which is there. There is the karma of this individual jiva, and there is also God Sankalpa. So everything put together decides that what path our life will take. And if we surrender and pray to the Lord, and He forgives us for all the past transgressions that we have committed, if He destroys our karmas, then we get moksha. So these are some of the things that we talked about in the previous satsang. Now today we will go forward and we will take up the 11th shloka onwards. This 11th shloka is a very often quoted shloka by all the acharyas to explain how ignorant people behave in this world. So Krishna is continuing to explain. So far he has been telling about his greatness, right? Now he is telling that in spite of my greatness being so obvious, there are people who don't recognize that. So in the 11th shloka, he says, Avajananti mamudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. So he says, fools, the mudha, the people who are foolish, the fools, they disregard me. They don't understand me. Avajananti. They don't understand what is my real nature. Why? Because I have taken a manushya rupa. I have appeared in a human form. So they disregard me and they don't know my actual transcendental nature, that I am the supreme lord of all beings. They don't know this real nature of mine. And just because I have appeared in a human form, they take me to be a human and they have no regard for me. So, what further things can we talk about here? Now, we saw that all these shlokas till now, Krishna was glorifying his greatness and saying that I am the Supreme Lord, I have so much greatness and all that. Now, he is trying to tell us that although he is so great, he has taken a human form. Now, compared to the greatness of the Lord, this human form is a very inferior kind of birth, and yet Krishna has taken that form. Now, although he has taken this human form, does it mean that any of his greatness has reduced? No. Even though he has taken the human form, he is still equally great. In fact, we can say that he is even greater because he has condescended. He has, agreed to come down from that great status of his. He has come down to this level of a human form. Now, the actual nature of the Lord is what? He is the Supreme Lord. He is omniscient. He is omnipotent. So he has everything. Now, ignorant people don't realize this nature of his. And when they talk about Krishna Avatara, they say that he is just a human, ordinary human being. And they say that, oh, he was just a cowherd who was grazing the cows in Gokul and Vrindavan. They say that he was just a makhanchor, he was a butter stealing thief. Then they say he was running behind the gopis. So they make fun of him and they don't accept that he is actually the Supreme Lord, right? So the question is, in that case, why Krishna doesn't go back to that original supreme form of his? If he is in that form, if he appears in front of us like Sriman Narayana, then we will definitely be able to understand that, oh, he is really great. Just because he came as a human being, we are deriding him, isn't it? We are ridiculing him. So why doesn't he appear in that form only, like the Supreme Lord? Because with our senses and our eyes and our limited capacity, we will definitely not be able to see him if he comes in the form as Sriman Narayana. If he comes in that divine form, we will not be able to see him, we will not be able to perceive his presence also. So he has taken this human form. He has, like, what do you say? He has shrunk his greatness into a form which our eyes can see. And he has made himself accessible to us out of compassion, so that when we see this form and we accept that yes, the Supreme Lord himself has come in this form, then we will be able to relate to him and we will be able to surrender to him, seeking refuge in him. If he is in the supreme form and we are not at all able to see that form, then what is the use? We will not be able to see him. Then where is the question of being able to surrender to him? But because he came as a human being and we were able to access him in that form, now we know that he is there. He was there. He was there for the gopis. He was there for Yashoda and Nanda Baba. He was there for Devaki and Vasudeva. He was there for all the Gopa boys. He was there for all the Yadavas. He was there for the Pandavas, and he was there for everybody. So now we know, and most importantly, he was there for Arjuna to clarify his doubts and get rid of all his, whatever misgivings that he had. So unless he had come in this form, how we would be able to have access to him? So out of his compassion, that is why I said that the acharyas tell that he is really great. We don't recognize him and call him a ordinary human being. And he's actually greater because he didn't stay in that supreme state. Rather, he came down as one among us. So that, in fact, shows even more his greatness because he is able to bring himself down to our level out of his compassion for us. And that compassion that he has, that karuna of the Lord, that is what is the quality that really makes him even more supreme. It is very easy for anybody to say that, oh, you are bad to me and I will be bad to you. But it is very rare that we find that somebody is bad and yet the other person does not reciprocate with badness. Instead, they are still compassionate. That is the greatest of qualities. And Lord has this quality. So whether he is in his supreme form as Sriman Narayana, or he has come down to earth as Rama, Krishna, or he has taken even some animal avatars like Varaha and Matsya and Kurma, whatever form he takes, he is always the supreme one. But out of ignorance, people don't understand this. Now, we are saying that ignorant ones means what? We think that people who are atheistic, people who are nastikas, we think that, okay, these are the people. They'll say, who is this Krishna? Why you are worshipping him? He had so many wives. He did all these things, and so on. But at every level, any jivatma at some time or the other will mistake Krishna. What to talk of ordinary human beings and people like us? Even Brahma got bewildered, isn't it? We know the Brahma Vimohana Leela when he kidnapped those cows and calves and took away the Gopa boys also. And Krishna went in the form as Brahma only and sat in his Brahmaloka. We know that story. So Brahma himself had got this jealous feeling that who is this fellow? What is his greatness? Like that. Then we saw how Indra got angry at the time when, I'm sorry, there's some disturbance. Just will wait a minute. So as we said, so Brahma got deluded. Then Indra who is supposed to be the king of Swargaloka, Indra who is supposed to be the king of all the Devatas, that Indra got angry when Krishna said we will offer puja to Govardhana Giri and not to Indra. And he tried to flood Vrindavan with those great floods. And finally, he was also humbled. So even somebody who is at the supreme level, not supreme, sorry, who is at a very high level, They are devatas. They are having much more jnana than us human beings. And yet, even Brahma and Indra have got confused. They have also been ignorant at times to understand the real supreme nature of the Lord, isn't it? And we talked, I think, in some previous satsang, we saw the story of this Romas Rishi who had so much hair on his body, and then one ring of hair had fallen off. And Brahma asked him that, what is that? So he said that when one lifetime of one Brahma gets over, then one hair falls from my body. So like this, I have been living for so long that so many Brahmas have died and so many are yet to come, and like that. And then finally Brahma realized that, oh, I am not really some great person. I also have a limited lifespan. So like this, there are so many cases where people in ignorance, human beings, the devatas, everybody in their ignorance, they think that Krishna is just a normal human being. Here, one interesting point to note is it is explained that by the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, like Swami Ramanuja has told in his Gita Bhashya, and also Vedanta Deshikar has commented in his Tatparya Chandrika, which is the commentary that we are following, that in the 11th chapter, when Krishna shows that Vishvarupa to Arjuna, then after seeing that Vishvarupa, Arjuna is kind of like, what do you say? He's amazed, then he's surprised, like then he's like wonderstruck that what is all this, there's so much. Then he realizes the greatness of the Lord, and then finally, but says, I don't want this anymore. Please show me again your four-armed form. So if he's telling that, Krishna, you show me, you come back, you show me again your previous four-armed form. That means what? That Krishna was always with four arms. At the time when he was born in that jail, he had appeared in the four-armed form. He was Chaturbhuja only. And he had Shankar, Chakra, Gada, Padma, everything he had in his hands. Because Devaki was scared and she said, oh Krishna, if Kamsa sees you like this, then he will definitely know you are Narayana. He will want to kill you. You please come in a normal human form. So then Krishna took on the normal form of a human with two arms until he was in Vraja, he was in Gokul with all the Gopas and all that. He was with that two-armed form only. Then when he came to Mathura and after killing Kamsa, our acharyas say that he came back to, now Kamsa was no longer there. So he came back to his four-armed form. So the acharyas say that, imagine, Krishna was walking around with those four arms everywhere. He was always present with the four arms. He had Shankha Chakra Gada Padma in his hand. And yet, despite seeing that, people were ignorant. There were some people who were ignorant. Like, for example, Shishupala and Dantavaktra. They were so ignorant. After seeing Krishna in that form also, they refused to accept that he is the Supreme Lord. So, how much great must be the ignorance to have this kind of a mindset? Another very beautiful thing that they narrate, the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas tell, is that Krishna's Krishna used to play with these Gopa boys, right? So many times these kids, when they are small, they play games, and they play games in such a way that in some of the things they will try to scare the other children. Now they are not fully big children; also they are little small children, so they get scared also easily. So there is one game that I think even you may be aware that many times small children, in our times at least, when we were small, we used to, like, they will take the what do you say, the eyelid, and they will turn it upwards so that that inner mucous membrane of that eyelid will be showing up outside, and when some children see that, they'll get scared. These were things that we used to do when we were young, and we used to do that just to scare the other our friends, like that. So many times these kids would play around, and some of the kids would do this kind of a thing to scare the other children. Now, when it was Krishna's turn to scare everybody, he will not do something ordinary like that. Any human child will do that thing of turning the eyelid upward and scaring the other children. You know what Krishna is to do? The acharyas say that Krishna's way of scaring the kids was, he was in his normal two-armed human child-like form. Suddenly, he would take on, for just one moment, he would take on this Chaturbhuja Rupa as the Supreme Lord, and seeing that, the boys would get scared that, what is this, who is this, where is our Krishna? And before they could register what had happened, he would come back to his normal form. So that is the game that Krishna used to play to scare the Gopa boys. So the Gopa boys were not able to make out because Krishna had kind of mesmerized them, and he had actually willed that they should not know his real presence. But in reality, Krishna was in that four-armed form later after Mathura, after killing Kamsa, and yet people were so ignorant that they did not accept that he was really a great person. Like later we will see that we contrast this with what is the nature of the bhaktas. So in the 12th shloka, Krishna explains, like he says, what are these people, these ignorant people? 11th shloka, he said they are mudha, he said they are fools. Now he is going one step further and saying that they have rakshasi and asuri kind of buddhi. So what does he say in the 12th shloka? Mogha sha mogha karmano mogha jnana chite vichetasaha rakshasima surim chaiva prakritim mohinim shrutaha. So he says these people are full of vain hope that they have wrong ideas. They have vain work. Whatever work they do, whatever karma they will do, it will have no value for them. And they have vain knowledge. They don't have any jnana also. Whatever they try to get some knowledge, that also is of no use for them. They will not get the correct knowledge. And because of that, they are insensible. They are incapable of understanding the great things in Shastra. And they have a deceitful nature, like the Rakshasas and the Asuras. So, this is their nature, people who are Mudha, people who refuse to accept the greatness of Krishna. So, these ignorant people, they are not having the right perception. Their perception is totally mistaken. So, previous shloka, Krishna said they are Mudha. Now he is saying they are Rakshasa and Asura like. Why? Because they don't realize that everything belongs to the Lord. Now, even among people who are practicing some kind of sadhana, there are some people who say that he is only a yogi with some special powers. Like they say he is just an ordinary person. Then, when you ask them, then how did he tell the Bhagavad Gita? How was he able to do all those miracles? How did he kill all those asuras and so on? Then they say that no, he is just a yogi, and by yoga bala he had some special powers, and therefore he did. Then there are some people who say that he is also just a devata, like how you have Brahma, Indra, and others, like that Krishna also is just a devata, and he is not the supreme lord. And others are of the Muda category, the lowest level of the Mudas, that they say, oh, he was only running around with gopis of Vrindavan. What is so great about him? So, those with lack of this knowledge. Now, these people who are the complete lowest level of Mudas, they are not going to worship the Lord. But those people who think that he is a Devata, or people who think that he is a yogi and having special powers, some of them may do some ritualistic worship. They may not do it for Krishna. They may do it in general to whoever they consider as God, right? So if they do some yajna or puja without the knowledge of the real nature of the Supreme Lord, Krishna is telling they will not get any benefit from whatever they do. They may do yajna, they may do puja, they may go to Tirtha Kshetra, they may do dana, whatever they do, they will not get any benefit because they are not accepting this truth that they are not accepting the truth that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, that Narayana is the Supreme Lord. So they may do things, but unless they have this acceptance that the Lord is Supreme, they will not get any benefits from whatever they are doing. Here, again, we can take the example of Bali Maharaja. Now, he did not recognize that Krishna, the Lord Narayana himself, had come as Vamana. He could not recognize. Why could he not recognize? Actually, in all ways, Bali was an ideal, sadhaka. He was very good-hearted. He used to help a lot of people. He was very generous. He was very pious. He used to do everything. And most important of all, he had great Guru Bhakti. He had all the qualities except one dosha. He thought he was greedy, that he wanted to be the owner of the entire universe. He refused to accept that everything in this universe belongs to the Lord. He said that I will become Swami. So he had that, what you say, that lobha, that greed, that ownership he wanted for everything in the universe. That was his biggest dosha. And because he had that quality, what is that quality? To say that I am supreme, I want to own everything, and nothing is for the Lord. There is no Lord, but I want to have everything. That is nothing but this Asuri kind of quality, isn't it? Generally, when we say Rakshasa and Asura, Rakshasas are having more of Tamoguna and lot of Rajoguna and uh, hardly any Sattva guna. And the Asuras are the ones who are having little Tamoguna, lots of Rajoguna, and they are having, maybe in some occasions they may have little bit of Sattva guna. So Asuras and Rakshasas, if you compare them, Rakshasas are even more lower down the rung. Asuras are kind of above them. So this Bali Maharaja, he was not Rakshasa, but he was definitely Asura. He had this thing that I am the owner of everything. So he was also an example of an ignorant person. And that is why everything he had to lose. Although he was otherwise a very nice person, pious person, yet because of this quality, because of ignorance, and then when Shukracharya tried to point out to him also, still he continued. He said that, oh, the Lord himself has come to ask from me. I am so great. I will give to the Lord. Who are we to give anything? This Atma within us is also the Lord's only. We can't even say we are giving this Atma back to the Lord. Then what ought to speak of other things in this universe? But he didn't recognize at that point also. Although he had so much Guru Bhakti, he did not take the teaching that, he did not take the advice that his Guru gave also. That also is another example of one fault that he showed at that point of time. So such people who have ignorance, whatever they may do. Now Bali himself did so many yajnas, he did so much, but he did so much dana. He was not able to enjoy the benefit of that. Why? Because he was an ignorant person, because he failed to accept that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So, like this, we can understand the meaning of these shlokas. Now we move on to the 13 shlokas. Now, so far, in the 11th and 12th, Krishna told about qualities of people who will never succeed in their sadhana. Now he is going to tell about the other category of people, the ones who are the bhakta. So he calls them Mahatma. So in the 13th shloka, we have seen always already previously, Krishna has said that these people, the people who are single-mindedly focused on him, who say that Vasudevam Sarvamiti, they are Mahatma. Now here again he is using the word Mahatma for his bhaktas. So he says, Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritimashritah bhajantyananya nyatva bhutadimavyayam. So he says, these Mahatmas, the magnanimous ones, O Partha, they are having Daivi gunas. They share my divine nature. Just like I have divine nature, they also have Daivi gunas. What do? They adore me with a single mind. They know me to be the immutable source of all beings. So, here he is explaining what are the qualities in these people. He says they are the opposite of the previous category. The Mudha were one category. Now he says the next other category of people are the Mahatmas. They have Daivi Guna. They have a godly nature. They have understood and they have accepted that the Lord is the creator of this universe while he himself cannot be destroyed. This universe is created by the Lord. It is sustained by the Lord. It is destroyed, finally dissolved at the end also by the Lord. But the Lord himself is indestructible. This they have realized. Now they are the ones who understand that Supreme Lord only has appeared as Krishna. No matter if he has taken a human form, even if he is appearing like a coward, even if he is doing foolish things in Braj, yet he is the great Lord himself. And because of that, they keep their single minded focus always on him. Now, these people may not be great tapasvis, they may not be great jnanis, they may not have studied all the shastras, but they know the simplest and most important jnana of all they have, that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Even they may be just ordinary people, but if they have bhakti, they have this idea, the correct perception of the Lord. Like for example, we know the story of the lady who was selling fruits. She was selling jamun fruits, and when Krishna came to give her some little grains of rice in his hand in exchange for the jamun fruit, she said, I will give you the fruit only if you grant me moksha. And he said, how did you know that I can grant you moksha? She said, I saw that on your hand when you came to give me the grains. I saw the Shankara Chakra Rekha on your hands. I know you are the Supreme Lord. How did that unlettered woman who was just selling fruits know of his greatness? Because she had bhakti. There was one malakar, one garland maker in Mathura. When Krishna went there before going to Kamsa's palace, Krishna wanted to adorn himself with a mala, with flower garlands. He went searching. He knew this person who was there in some tiny gully somewhere in Mathura. He knew that he was his bhakta. He went in search of him. And that garland maker was so overwhelmed when Krishna came and stood in front of him in his house, in his little hut. He was so overwhelmed that he picked up the best mala that he had and he gave it to Krishna. So, what was the greatness of that garland maker? There was one washerman who was washing the clothes and taking it, washed clothes, he was taking to Kamsa. And when Krishna asked him for the clothes, he said, no, no, this is all not for people like you. You are just a ordinary cowherd who has come here. I am going to give it only to Kamsa. That fellow died at the hands of Krishna. But this person who knew the greatness of Krishna, he got moksha only by offering the garland to Krishna. So, like this, there are so many people who understand the greatness of Krishna as long as they have bhakti in him. And now, because it's related, we will take up this 14th shloka. We have few minutes only left. We will take this because this is very, very important shloka and it's related to all this. So, in the 14th shloka, he says, Krishna tells, Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridavrataha namasyanantash, sorry, namas anant namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. So he is describing now how a person with bhakti behaves. Satatam kirtayantoma. They are always doing kirtan of me. They are always glorifying me. And they are striving with a steadfast resolution. They are determined and striving. And they are doing namaskar to me. They are always prostrating to me in devotion. And their only aim, their only goal is to have eternal communion, to always remember me. That is all that they are doing. And by this way, they are adoring me always. So, what are the different activities that a bhakta should do? He should do kirtanam, he should sing the Lord's glories. He should do yatanam, that is yajna, puja, any kind of worship of the Lord. He must do namaskara, he must prostrate to the Lord. He has bhakti and he has love for the Lord. And Nitya Yukta, he is always being with the Lord in his thoughts. Even if physically it is not possible to sit in front of the Murti of the Lord, at least mentally he is always remembering the Lord. So these are the kind of qualities that bhaktas have. So, what is the value of this shloka for us? That we must understand that these are the things bhaktas do, and we must try to do these more and more often. How many times are we singing the Lord's glories? How much time are we spending in worshipping Him? Do we prostrate to Him physically, mentally, in every possible way? Have we tried to increase our love for Him? Are we constantly trying to think of the Lord? These are questions we must ask ourselves because this is what Krishna is describing as the qualities of a bhakta. And this glory of this kirtana, of this glorifying the Lord, chanting His names for the present times, for Kali Yuga, it is told in so many places. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a shloka which says, Krite yadhyayato Vishnum, Tretayam yajato makhaihi, Dwapare paricharyayam, Kalau tad hari kirtanam, Kalau tad hari kirtanam, kirtanat. So, whatever results people were getting in Satya Yuga and Krita Yuga by meditation, dhyana on Vishnu, they were getting that benefit by doing yajna in Treta Yuga. Then during Dwapar Yuga, they would get the same benefit by doing archana, by serving the Lord in and doing puja to Him. In Kali Yuga, all this benefit simply a person can get very easily by chanting the name of Hari. There is a shloka in the Vishnu Purana also which says, Dhyayan krite yajan yajnais tretayam dwaparechayam yadapnoti tadapnoti kalau sankirtya keshavam. Whatever is obtained by a person through meditation in Satya Yuga, by performing yajnas and sacrifices in Treta Yuga, by worshipping the lotus feet of Krishna in Dwapar Yuga, that same benefit can be got in the age of Kali simply by glorifying and singing the glories of Keshava. So these are some of the things through which our elders, the rishis, we are being given this advice constantly that we must constantly remember the Lord. We must constantly sing His glories. It is not enough to mentally remember in our mind, but we should do loud kirtan. Many times, if we are chanting and sitting and doing namasmaran silently, we may fall asleep. We may find other thoughts entering our head. But when loudly we do sankirtan, and especially if we do it in the company of other people, then there is less chance of us getting distracted. So we must repeatedly perform Hari Kirtan. All the time we should remember the Lord, chant his names, and sing his glories. That is the quality of a true bhakta. So with that, we have come to the end of our time also for today. Let us offer gratitude now. And in the next satsang, we will continue and see what more Krishna is going to tell about these qualities of people who are his bhaktas. So, with this, we will offer gratitude at the lotus feet of Krishna and Guru and thank them for inspiring us to join this satsang, and pray that their blessings and grace should always be on us. Thank you, everybody, for joining in, and we will meet again next Friday as usual. We will meet. Thank you. Namaskar.